Hello, welcome to WoTTalk. Today is very dramatic, as we will be discussing many things WoTTalk related. Okay, let's stop that now. So, Jen and Jess from the White Tower podcast are joining WoTTalk today as the second ever WoTTalk guests. You're coming as the after performance of my dad, so I don't know how that feels.
Can you please tell your dad that I think he's great? Because I listened to that episode and I was just like, Daniel's dad coming in hot with the dad jokes. Yes, it was very good. I enjoyed it immensely.
He's a rather smart man with lots of opinions, and I've been debating him since I could pretty much talk.
Really?
He usually wins. Yeah.
I love it.
But in today's episode, Jess and Jen from the White Tower podcast, what arguably, the most White Tower thing to exist in the real world. I don't think there's another White Tower anything out there. And my I'm gonna say I'm not biased because I've been on it, but it's definitely one of the greatest podcasts ever recorded. And if you haven't already, you should definitely go check it out.
Yeah, we are pretty awesome.
High praise.
Pretty fantastic.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Daniel. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Very kind.
We're happy to be here. WoTTalk is a very big thing, and we're excited to kind of dig into some questions and roundtable some things about Wheel of Time.
Fair warning to my more sensitive viewers. I know I typically keep things remotely clean. I often slip up. This one expects some profanity. It's kind of their style. I like it.
It's our brand. Sorry.
Now. It's the brand. So in this episode, we figured we'd have more of a loose framing, a looser formatting. And we're going to start off with just talking about Brandon Sanderson damn it, I was doing okay there for a second.
How's that going for you, bud?
We were going to discuss Brandon Sanderson's taking over the series and see where the conversation goes from there. Usually WoTTalk is me screaming into an echo chamber of myself, and it'll be fun to have people here to tell me I'm wrong and to disprove me.
No,
we can just all scream together.
Which Jen and Jess have both done on their podcast.
Well, we're all different people, and that's a cool thing. That's one of the things I said, like, even before you're coming on about Wheel of Time, is so many books and so many characters. Like, not everyone's going to completely have the same exact feeling about every scenario and character, and that's part of the appeal. So, of course, we're not going to agree. Like, that's part of it. But that's good. I think that's healthy, because if everyone did agree on one thing, then that's kind of lame.
We wouldn't have podcast about anything.
Yeah, I mean, because there would be nothing to talk about because everyone would intrinsically agree with what you're saying anyways. So anyway.
Yes. But you have successfully changed my mind, and that is not something many people can say. I'm a bit of a stubborn dude.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing.
So what I'd like to just kind of start off is with a question for you guys, because I don't think I've actually asked this of either of you, and that is, how do you feel as a whole with Brandon Sanderson's taking over of the Wheel of Time series? Please excuse the hiccup. Let's go ahead and start off with Jen. How do you feel about Brandon's taking over the series as a whole?
So
did he do a good job? Did he do a bad job? That was really general. Sorry.
So there's only... Okay, so I think he did a really good job. I remember, because it's been a while since I've read the books. I'm in the middle of a reread now. But so full disclaimer there. But I will say, I think he did a really good job. He cut back on a lot of, like, everyone already has said this before me. The embroidery, I think, and things of that nature. He got less descriptive, but I think toward the end of the book, the reader had already, by book 11, 12, it's like they had immersed themselves already in the world enough, so where you can just go with, plot continuance or whatever you want to call that. And he successfully penned that well, in my opinion. The only thing that I would have wanted, and I think Jordan had intentionally set up for more of this, was the tower that Matt was in, freeing Moraine. I would have liked to see a little bit more of that. It just seemed kind of like a very, not minor side quest, but just kind of like, okay, this is all going and Matt's doing this and now Moraine's back and everything's cool. I wish there had been more like a dungeon crawl, maybe with that. Maybe that's the old school D&D player in me coming out, but I would have liked to see maybe a little bit more than that. Otherwise, he handled everything, I think, as perfectly well as anyone else could that didn't come up with the story and just tried to pick up where someone was leaving off. So I think he did a great homage. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, Jessica, let's. I feel like an intense radio host, so let's buy into that. Jessica, what are your thoughts?
Okay, this.
First of all, Jessica, it's very fancy.
I
Very,
don't see
very
Jessica.
fancy.
Whoa.
Yeah.
The full
Not many
name.
people call me that. Usually it makes me mad, but it actually surprisingly didn't this time. So
Okay, sorry, Jess.
no, it's fine. It's totally fine.
Jay Sizzles.
Oh my god, I've never heard that before. That's amazing.
That's canon now. So yeah, my perspective on it was I don't know how you guys ended up doing this. I know a lot of people had to wait for each of the books to come out because they were sort of reading from kind of the beginning. That wasn't my experience. I came into it. Everything was already published and done by the time I sort of restarted. The first time I started reading it, they were not finished. It was like 2004, 2005, something like that. The second time I started reading through, everything was finished. And so I had this perspective of going from the last book written by Jordan into the first book written by Sanderson. And I was fully expecting there to be a significant enough change in sort of tone and style, which I think is to be expected when a different author has taken over the story, but that actually I didn't find that to really be the case. I was expecting it to be different enough that it would be distracting, but it wasn't. It had a little bit of a different tone, a little bit of a different, I almost want to say kind of sass to it, but overall the tone and style was close enough that it did not distract. It didn't pull me out of the story. And that was very surprising to me. My sole complaint about the way he handled the story was he had 3 books and we got to the end and we didn't get any kind of closure on any of the other storylines that were happening. There were all of these storylines, complex, weaving together all of these things that were headed in these different directions. What happened to the Aiel? What happened to Rand's wives? What happened with Nynaeve and Lan? What happened to all of these storylines? He was very deliberate about making these important. And then none of them got resolved. We had 3 books, umpteen chapters of Perrin in the fucking wolf dream doing his fucking training montages, and no closure whatsoever on any of these other storylines. And when I finished, I was kind of in rage mode about it. I was like very disappointed. There were a lot of things that I wanted to see how they ended up after the Dark One was defeated. And I did not get that. And so I did not like that. But in terms of just his style and his capability in taking over the story, I thought it was great. I mean, I feel like he kind of nailed everything aside from, all of that other stuff that I talked about.
No, that you bring up an interesting point, because it's hard to say, okay, did Jordan want this kind of more open-ended stuff? Was that what was in the notes? Or is this a choice Brandon made? We don't really know. With how meticulous Jordan is, I can't imagine he didn't have something. But whether or not he wanted that something available to the reader, this leads into a whole conversation of authorial intent, death of the author, all this stuff like that of, do we as the reader have the right to get all these answers? I kind of fall into the no. If an artist wants to make however they want to make it, then and you're unsatisfied, tough tomatoes. That's kind of my approach. But there's often an accusation leveled with Brandon's takeover that he bumbled a couple characters the way that the character actually was under his writing versus under Jordan's. Is there any characters that jump out in your mind as mishandled in any way? Either of you?
I've only read the Sanderson one once. So at the moment, nothing is jumping out at me. It's entirely possible that if one of y'all mention something, then it'll sort of click. But Jen, do you have anything for that?
Here's the thing. I don't know how much of what I would say to lay at Branderson.
That's canon. He's
I
Branderson
really
now.
went and combined both his first and last
Mm.
name. Excuse me. At Sanderson's feet. Because, okay, did Jordan, like you said, Daniel, did Jordan have it from the beginning all along that he wanted to keep Tom and Maureen's kind of situation very low key until the very end? Like, and Sanderson was just going along with what Robert Jordan had planned along in his notes. That's something as an audience and reader we're not privy to, but that would be just kind of interesting maybe to know, because if you look at Jordan's writing before Sanderson took over, it was the same kind of low-key situation as it was after the fact. So I don't know. Also, trying to get to everything, I think obviously Sanderson was less detailed, Biggin. I think that it was because it's time to move the reader along, and they've been waiting for these books to come out, and Jordan has passed, and we no longer need to get the reader immersed as much, but we just need to move plot. So I think Sanderson had that with a full key in mind. I'm going to do this. Was it originally supposed to be 13 books? I thought I read somewhere that they went over. Is that true, or did I read incorrectly?
Originally, Brandon was going to write one book, but I think rather fairly, he said, "There's no way to possibly wrap this all up in one book."
I see. I did not.
I mean,
know that.
he didn't wrap it up in
possible.
3, so I mean, fair.
No.
Yeah.
I mean,
wonder, as a fan, I wonder, was there a negotiation? Did he ask for 5 and they said no? We'll give you 2. Then he said 4. Then they said 3. Like, it's we don't know.
That would be
what
interesting.
The argument was there.
Here's the thing. I think that it's really interesting when you kind of look online and see what other people's opinions of this is, other than just our 3 opinions here. People are not 100%, completely okay with it, and you're going to find that. But all in all, generally, I mean, there's a pretty much unified consensus that, yeah, there's going to be another writer. Yeah, there's going to be some, conflicts because of that, because that's going to happen. There's no way you can avoid that. But generally, everyone just seems to think that all in all, Sanderson had a big task ahead of him. And he did a good job. And he did a good job. Yeah, considering the monumental effort. Like, imagine if you were I or Jess.
Hard pass.
Either one of us were approached and said, "Hey, you got to finish this." We'd be like, that's a great thing, but it's also, can you imagine the amount of pressure?
Yeah.
Like, he did a great job considering what he had stacked against him. I mean, he took on that project knowing it would be great, but there were going to be some mutterings about it as well. He knew that going into it. Yeah. He did the best that he could.
Now, I'm going to throw a hypothetical at you. And we all, like, even criticisms aside, we all appreciate what Brandon did. We understand it's an incredibly difficult task, what he was handed, and he did it remarkably well, better than I think anyone had a right to expect. But that does beg a question. If Brandon did not exist, is there any author that you two really love, or you would have loved to see take a shot themselves at finishing the series? Either like a serious answer, or, oh, wouldn't it be awesome if we just kind of got this version of it? Either one's totally fine, but is there anyone in your mind where it's, I'd love to see this author, dead or alive, take a swing at it as well?
Ooh, dead or alive. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Ooh. I've given my serious answer, and I've given a joke answer before on my channel. My joke answer is Stephen King. Let's just see what King would do with what exists in the Wheel of Time.
Yeah, that would be crazy.
Yeah,
it would be a very different. But is there anyone who jumps to y'all's mind?
Do you want to know? I am a huge fan of the Outlander series by Diana Gabaldon. She is a delightful person. I love the books. It's historical fiction trash. It's trashy romance, but it's so well written and it's really well researched because she's like a biologist or some before she decided to become an author, or research something. I don't know. Anyway, but it's like her writing style is fun and she is creative, and I think that a Diana Gabaldon spin on the series would be exceedingly fun.
I wish I had read some of her books so I could like give an informed opinion in response. Does she just have like that kind of grand writing style, or is it more just a personal preference for her?
She does have a kind of grand writing style. The books are basically, it's a huge series. There's something like 7 or 8 books in the series now. There are more coming, and they're all just fat books.
Yeah,
It's
I've seen them. I know who you're talking
yeah,
about.
and it's basically time travel kind of fantasy and historical fiction, and I don't know. I think that her style, I don't think would necessarily like jive with Jordan's. Like it wouldn't be a sort of seamless kind of transition, but I think her take on it would be interesting and fun.
Okay. Jess, do you have an answer at all, or sorry, Jen, do you have an answer at all, or is that just no? You don't think it could be done with anyone besides Brandon?
I think first of all, that was cool. It would be awesome to see like the grimdark George R. R. Martin, to see what he would do with it. He'd probably like that'd be insane.
Yeah.
I would love.
Can you imagine George R. R. Martin writing The Last Battle?
He
Bro,
fucking, like, I mean,
bro,
yeah,
that's my fun
it would
answer.
be- like,
let's kill everybody.
I was gonna say, like
imagine George R. R. Martin writing the scene where Land came up to Demandrid. Okay, that would be amazing. Okay, I don't know though. I just have a fun answer for that one.
I don't know. I think it would be
maybe that's
interesting to see what Tolkien would do with it. And I know that that's maybe
dead or alive. Yeah.
like I think that's a cliche answer, but Tolkien was what got me into fantasy in the first place. And that's sort of
Yeah, you legitimately love
yeah,
him.
that's
Yeah,
like
you had your own podcast
I
for
did.
a while about
Girls
it.
with Glasses Talk Tolkien. BT Dubs, we are doing a one-time only reunion for the movie about like the biopic about Tolkien that's going to be coming out, the movie. But
Very cool.
But yeah, like I am a complete Lord of the Rings Tolkien fangirl, and you know, he's got like one thing that I have noticed and really respect about Jordan is that, you know, to the point what we were talking about with all the storylines that didn't get tied up, and was that intentional? Was Jordan just like, okay, I know everything that's going to happen here, but that's not happening in the series. We're not going into it. I find it very difficult to believe that he didn't have that information. So, you know, from that standpoint, just sort of the depth and the level of detail in the world building that Jordan has done, it seems like Jordan never wrote anything without intention. You know what I mean? And Tolkien was very much the same way, very in depth, very epic kind of world building type of fantasy. Two very different styles. I think it would be really interesting to see how Tolkien would interpret Jordan's story.
What about you, Daniel? What's your serious answer? You said your fun answer. Do you have a serious answer? I don't.
For me, I tried to look at, okay, what author, the world's already built, so I don't need to worry about an author who can come in and continue to building a world. I need an author who can handle and manage the characters who are really, you know, that you need to understand them deeply. So that rules out quite a few people, because a lot of authors' strength is world and ideas, and they kind of fall apart with character. But personally, it would be a massive tone change. I think the author of the Witcher series, whose name I have never and will never pronounce correctly.
Oh yeah, I know you're talking about.
Yeah, he does a good job and with character. But if I was going to go with someone who I think could come closer to actually capturing the initial tone, I'd go R.A. Salvatore. His work in Forgotten Realms.
That's hitting close to my heart. I'm very familiar with his works.
Yeah.
Okay.
because his work in Forgotten Realms is usually considered the best in Forgotten Realms. He can handle a big world, and I adore his character work.
He worked
So I
hard to
think
get
that would
there.
work out pretty
It was a struggle. Like his earlier materials were, oh boy, everyone agrees.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he definitely grew to that, and there's a lot of Dritz fans and everything like that. That's close to my heart. I like that answer. I guess if we were going with authors that are close to your heart as far as that goes, I go Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman, but I don't know if they can handle that together. But the original Dragonlance series I just love, so maybe I would say that is my serious answer. But that's in the same kind of Forgotten Realms, Dragonlance, they go hand in hand in that larger D&D world building scape. So maybe that. But yeah, wow, I did not expect that answer from you. So I've very rarely heard you talk about him. So that's interesting. Okay.
I like Ari Salvatore. I'm aware of his flaws, though.
Yes,
and
yes,
I had
yes. I was saying at the beginning, he definitely grew. The reader got to see him grow and develop as an author for sure,
Absolutely. And here's the thing, I'll add on as well. If Brent Weeks keeps improving on this level, he's improving. Yeah, he's constantly getting better, and if he keeps getting better,
I would
I'd
like
love
to see
to see
that.
how he can handle.
He could have handled the last battle with his very dark, very gruesome tellings of things. I love his Night Angel trilogy. That's all I've read of him. I know that he has others that like I haven't read all those books, but I did the Night Angel trilogy. It's really good. Anyway, go ahead. Yeah. Sorry.
No, you're fine. He's someone who I'm keeping my eye on because I have a lot of faith for him in the future because he seems like the kind of author who's getting more and more aware of his flaws.
He's good. He's good people. Yeah. Anyway, go
ahead. But that was kind of all the questions I had pre-prepared. Just kind of seeing like how you guys felt about how Brandon did. Was there anyone else you wanted to see take over? Honestly, the only reason I even brought up Stephen King was because I want to see Fain's ending done justice, and I feel like Stephen King could write an ending for Fain that would actually really fit. Because creepy, disgusting, horrible person. Yeah, that's kind of Stephen King's wheelhouse. A little bit,
yes, for sure.
Yeah, if we're going criticisms of Brandon Sanderson, that's my only real one. His handling of Padon Fain, it's the most anticlimactic ending. It's pretty for a villain I can think of.
Yeah, it is pretty anticlimactic. I don't know that you've spoken about this before. Yeah, I mean, because he's just been the guy that always got away, or they couldn't deal with it up until the very last end, and then all of a sudden he's like, "Oh, okay, that's it. That was the end of it." But maybe that was Sanderson's personal taste coming in. Maybe he was like, "Look, this is just some regular that has a dagger. Let's just kill him. Like, what the there's a Forsaken and like the Dark One we've got to deal with. Padon Fain, who? Like, let's kill him." Maybe that was his. I don't agree. I don't agree with. I don't agree with that. I agree with you, Daniel, that he deserved more of a difficult kill, but maybe that was Sanderson's like, you know what? I'm gonna have a little bit of personal fun with this. I don't like this guy. Just let's get him out of here. I'm not gonna write more about him. I got too many other things to write about than continuing his arc. He should have died 7 books ago.
There's a certain poetry in an ignominious death, for a villain. I don't know.
True. You can absolutely have the opinion that you kind of like the fact that Padon Fain was this try-hard from book 1, and he just kind of got swept to the side, not even by his arch nemesis. It was mainly because he's hurt Rand on several occasions that I wanted Rand to deal with him. That I was like, there's that connection there, but instead it was Matt, and so there's there's the dagger connection, but that hasn't been relevant for 10 plus books. Yeah. So it was a little like, all right, well, okay,
I guess that's that then.
And I did like that Matt was immune to the knife. That was cool. That I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't have thought of it, but it makes complete sense.
It makes complete sense. I guess, for something that's going to come round again, you're going to have the person that was also afflicted by the same thing that gives him strength the only person that could be immune to it is the only person that could kill him. I mean, from that perspective, because Rand has got some bigger fish to fry at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So maybe that was what he thought. I don't know. But the only thing that I really think that either Sanderson or Jordan, I really think that, for Perrin, I just feel that Rand had the main thing, and then Matt had his own glories, and they kind of had that joking back and forth between Rand and Matt, who accomplished more, which was fun to read. And then you had Perrin, who always comes as the lesser of the three. Like, okay,
well, what do you mean, Jen?
Like, your story arc is killing the prophet, and you don't even kill the prophet. Like, I don't know.
Perrin,
I don't know. Like, I wish more for him. Like, I wish he did more than just take care of the two
Perrin
rivers.
had that horrible 90s sitcom marriage story arc.
It was
it wasn't. It was bad. It was bad.
It was bad. Yeah, it was bad. Yeah. I just wish more for Perrin. That's all. I mean, come on. I think everyone does. I think everyone wants to see him absolutely go crazy and go into where he turns into like a wolf in the real world and goes like ham or something. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. Just who knows? I mean, that's obviously fantastical, but it's a fantasy book. I don't know. Continue.
Yeah. Well, I'm a little curious. I've slowly become a Fail and Perrin defender. Which it's just, I hear, because I'm talking to a community that loves the series, and I deeply love it. So I'm kind of wanting to be converted. So I like Egwene a lot more than I used to.
Convince me. Give me your best arguments.
Well, it wasn't like name another fantasy relationship that's like it, that has that kind of real world thing where there are people out there who like to fight. And what happened if this person who liked to fight got in a relationship with someone who was very not that, but they really loved each other? I mean, that's something that happens in the real world, and I can't think of happening in the fantasy genre again. So it wasn't just another rinse, wash, repeat.
I feel like
fantasy
it's
romance.
Not a
it was
trope
one that has
at all.
Yeah, it's not. It's something that fit the characters. One, it enhanced the culture of the world they were in, because you got to look into Fail's culture, and it made sense for Perrin's culture. And it was part of Jordan's whole, let's have these people clash over their culture identity, which is a theme that lasts throughout the entire series. And again, I don't think it's the best romance in the whole series, but I think it gets unnecessary levels of hate. And it certainly could have used some touching up and execution, but I don't know. I don't hate it with as much vitriol as I hate the, Gawain, Egwene romance, which,
Egwene needs to have some
Jess
fucking
and I
standards.
Girl,
you don't need a man.
Jess and I talked about this. Yeah, it's like, why did she need to be in a relationship?
It's like, if you want to get laid, you don't have to get married for it. Like,
you don't have to get married. You don't need that. You don't need even either one of them. Like, I don't know. Like, it seemed like Jordan and at the end Sanderson were not necessarily so much Sanderson, but Jordan's trying to pair everybody off. And
I want to unpack the Gawain thing here real quick.
Goodness.
I've been thinking about it. And so, all right, who's Gawain? Gawain is the first, what is he? The first prince of the sword or some shit. So Gawain was raised to basically be second to a woman. So theoretically speaking, he should not have a problem with the fact that a woman is in charge, that a woman is the boss of him, that she is going to tell him to do stuff. And so I feel like it's almost a character change, like an out of character kind of character change, that all of a sudden he gets together with Egwene, they get married, he becomes her warder, she's the Amerlin seat. Okay, he grew up with an Aes Sedai in his home. He's completely comfortable with all of this. Now, all of a sudden, he can't take orders. He can't deal with the fact that she is the person who is in authority. He cannot just do what she needs him to do. He can't work with her like they're a team. He has to go off on his own and do his own thing, and he has to be a little about anything that she tells him to do and just generally be a huge pain in the ass. Does anybody else think that doesn't make sense? I don't think
I
it makes
mean,
sense.
it
Is it
depends.
just
Like, he could
because
have
she's his
been.
wife?
He could have.
Like, I don't. It just
I
it doesn't jive for me. It just doesn't make sense.
to play devil's advocate in response. Just because that was what Gilad was told his purpose wouldn't necessarily mean he was ever okay with it. We never got enough of his internal dialogue at those times, in my opinion, to fully make a assertion of was he okay to be kind of subservient to his sister all the time or not? Was there any resentment? And maybe with the stakes being so high, he's not just protecting a queen. There is supernatural assassins and things like that, things that are far beyond what was typical. Maybe that's leading him to be viewing his position differently. Maybe the status of warder makes him view it differently. There's levels there. I'm not trying to say he's completely justified or anything. I think he's rather bothersome at that time. But I'm saying there's at least reasoning behind it. Also, he wasn't ever the best fleshed out character, so it's difficult to
No,
rein him in
that's true.
entirely. He certainly had like times where he was just vendetta against Rand and nothing else. And there was times where he was more just, oh my god, I can't ever think of anything but Egwene. She's the greatest thing ever. So it's hard to figure out what his motivation. Yeah, it's hard to figure out as an author where to take him and why. I think because it was a little confusing. I think at points for him, and I'm sure Jordan did have a plan. But if there's any character who there's not the most notes about, it's probably him.
Yeah, probably. And I mean, you do make a valid point that, even if he was, I mean, just like even in one of the more recent chapters that we did on White Tower, um he seemed very cool and very chill with his role. Like, he understands his sister, he understands that he needs to protect her, but he also understands that he can't like put a chokehold on her. So he sort of is trying to strike a balance between letting her do the things that she wants to do and also protecting her. The impression that I got was that he was like adjusted and down with his role. Now, again, because everything that Jordan writes is intentional, it's entirely possible that we'll get further in and I will start to see cracks showing that I did not notice before. But, I guess I'm working under the assumption that he was cool with all of that stuff, but maybe he wasn't. And the other thing, like you said, Daniel, with all of the stakes being so high, everybody responds to stress in different ways. And it could just be that he's really bad at dealing with stress.
Yeah.
Or maybe like, this is his wife, and yeah, she's the Amerlin seat, but she's his wife, and like he can't keep his head on straight. Maybe he's a foil to Lan who is 100% cool with having a woman be in charge and completely cool with having that woman in charge be his wife, and he can handle it. He's much older, he's much more mature. Gawain isn't, and he's just not equipped for having his partner be the person who is not just Aes Sedai and, with him as her warder, but also having her be in that position of authority, so there's probably more layers to it. But yeah, my initial.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say,
No, go ahead.
and to push completely like too far, and maybe not too far. Maybe there's some validity in what I'm gonna say. Maybe Egwene should have taken the 5 minutes to tell him what her plan was, so he didn't have a chance of ruining it. Maybe include people who care about the plan.
That seems to be a common issue. In this reread, I'm learning more and more about how Jordan, because I'm on book 9 of my reread now. And we're now getting into the division between the White Tower and the Black Tower. And the more I'm looking at it, I'm like, just using real life experiences and matching that with Jordan's tone on how males and females interact with each other. I'm like, he's intentionally writing this where the characters are like puffed up. Like whenever an Ashaman enters the room, like when Tame enters, when Elaine first comes to Camelin to try to win her seat for becoming the queen. That whole exchange, which is in the introduction of book 9, reading it over again is what I'm using as the basis for my argument here. Right before she goes and does the sister bonding ceremony with Avienda, it's intentionally, you could feel, you're like, oh, okay, I see where he's leading this. Just like how Elaine was arguing with the Windfinder beforehand about her promise to have Aes Sedai come over and teach them uh things, and then all of a sudden when Tame comes in, she's linking with them, like all of a sudden, like the Aes Sedai, Elaine and the Windfinder are all together, like against Tame, and there's this, they're not even talking to each other, they're not even, every single interaction, including Tovine or whatever her name is, that gets captured, the red sister that tries to come and just automatically on Elida's orders try to kill or subdue all of the Ashaman that are in the Black Tower. I mean, just the way that the things that are written, it's intentionally skewed to where you have this confrontation between male and female powers, which has led to this division between the two for so many years past the Age of Legends, when they two used to work together. And it's so intentionally written to where the two are just clashing this together all the time, where you just said, Daniel, why can't she have told him her plan for 5 seconds? It's because you have this intrinsic cultural thing where men and women are just, well, men act this way, and of course they do this and think this. Well, women are going to be this way about all of Matt's sayings, for example, about women, and all of
women be
and
like
all
this,
of
and men be
Aes
like
Sedai
this.
saying, well, you know how men are, blah blah blah. Like it's so it's laden with that. It's dripping with that throughout the entire
It's so
series. It's
fucking
like, this isn't
annoying.
real life. No, men and women aren't so prejudiced against each other about beating each other. They're usually, at least even on the surface, more cordial than that, and will have respectful dialogue, even if they don't necessarily 100% trust each other. But there's none of that going on for books and books and books and books in this series. So it's just, that's the way it be in this period of time, and that's what's caused a lot of these problems. Like you said, Daniel, if she had just told her what, or hey, this is the plan, I'm going to do this. But in Jordan's time and Jordan's writing, it didn't make sense for her to do that because of how we see it, how you and I see it in this world. Yeah, she could have just told her fucking husband, hey, I'm doing this, be cool. But she didn't, because in that world, it's if a man is in the room or if a woman is in the room, we act this way, versus if it just be a women. And he drew upon the maidens being a society where they're also comfortable with their talk and how they act and blah 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 blah. And he just made a society where even the White Tower women can be just so comfortable. Let me tell you something, even a lot of women right now would not be comfortable just getting naked in front of another woman and just being cool just because it's a girl. Like there's more comfortability along men joking around with each other, even in the army camps with each other, and women. As long as you're a dude talking to another dude, you're fine. And if you're a woman talking to another woman, you're fine. Even if you're of completely different cultures and completely different lands. Jordan stresses that. But the moment you have one of the two genders talking to each other, clash. Like even in the beginning of this book 9, when Perrin comes in to find Fail captured, I know we're starting this log. He
Life-saving prayers, my
he
dude.
comes into the camp and it's Barrelane being the only person trying to calm everybody because the two camps are just warring with each other. Like it's just chaos. And it normally people wouldn't be so up at arms with each other. It's just men and women are so indisposed is what it is, that they cannot even communicate, and that's unfortunate. I think Jordan, I think his message at the end of it all was, yeah, maybe he was trying to say that to the real world, hey, just communicate with each other, because if you don't, wars happen, everything happens. This is what it is. I'm sorry. I'm cutting on your rant. I apologize.
No, you're good. I was just trying to add dramatic tension to what you were
I'm
saying.
jumping
It
off.
was
Oh my
very
God, I'm
dramatic.
It
embarrassed.
worked. Oh, the
I'm trying to make a
drama.
point. Like, just talk to each other.
No, but your point is well taken as well.
Yeah.
But I don't necessarily agree with the assessment that in the real world, men and women overall do a better job of communicating with one another. There's still very much this sort of, I mean, going back to the whole like bad 90s sitcom thing, I still see and hear people talking about this whole concept of, for example, needing to quote unquote train a man. Like, what train him for what? Train him to do what? Be a person, be an acceptable person. If he is not an acceptable person for you to like commit to, then like commit to somebody else if you don't like him the way that he is. There's this whole idea that, people still buy into this whole thing that like, okay, well, you marry him and then you fix him after the fact. Well, no, that's not what you do with people. People still think like that. They still talk like that. And maybe it's less than it was before, with people sort of, younger people, the millennials kind of being more realistic about partnerships and the people that they want to spend their lives with and things like that. But I mean, you still have that whole idea that, a partner is somebody that, you find somebody and then you fix them and turn them into the person that you want them to be or think that they should be. And that has not been completely eradicated, just sort of as a counterpoint. So
I did not mean for the piano music to be like cutting you off. I just meant to add dramatic tension to what
Sorry,
you were
I
saying, because I
realized
found it to be
ranting,
very
though. As soon as you
dramatic.
put up, like, oh, okay, oh my God, it's like the Oscars. Okay.
No, that is not how I meant
I'm
it.
so sorry. I didn't mean to do that.
No, oh God, no, I didn't mean to click it. Stop there.
Oh God, that's so
well,
that's
on
amazing.
that note, this has been an episode of WoTTalk featuring the White Tower podcast. In the future, we will be having more guests appear, which I look forward to as well. I hope to turn WoTTalk into a community place where people trying to get started or who are established in the Wheel of Time community can come and make their voice heard. So anyone at all, let me know and I'll try to arrange something for you. But this has been an episode of WoTTalk. Thank you guys so much for coming on.
Of course. Thank you so much for having us. Yes.
This was very fun.
Thank you.
Goodbye, everybody.